Hi everyone, my name is Tony German. I'm a student in the Intercultural Communication class here at NDSU. Today I'm here to talk with you about my service learning experience and what I did for that. So first off, looking at what I wanted to do, I'm an agribusiness major, and I decided the best thing for me would be to find something that's in my degree that's a little culturally different. So I did a little digging to find something that was a little different, and I was able to find a family operation that was run out of Baldwin, North Dakota. It's run by Jaden Savin and his uncle, and they're a fairly medium-sized farm, and they also do harvesting for crops, but they also do cattle as well. Their biggest people that they serve is the U.S. food industry as a whole, but on the smaller scale, they just serve us overall population. So what they do is every year they'll harvest their crops and sell them to the grain elevators, and on top of that, with their cattle during the winter months, they'll sell them off to packaging companies that will then turn those into steaks for us to purchase. So I want to elaborate a little bit on how and why this opportunity presented itself to me. Like I said, I'm an agribusiness student, but I'm also graduating this December 14th. And after reading through the text this year, chapter 9 really stood out to me on the aspect of cultural identity. And I really wanted to get a firsthand experience of the cultural identity of the farming community. Me being in this industry now, I really wanted to find the similarities and the differences that we both share. So I found no better way than to actually get on the farm experience. It was very easy to tell right when we get out there that the similarities we shared is we both wanted to offer effective products and solutions. Me, when I graduate, I want to sell chemical and seed to these farmers. What these farmers want to do is they want to offer the best products to the grain elevators so they get the best prices. And in return, the food industry will benefit in general. The biggest difference that I found when we went out there was they grew up on the farm and I grew up in the city. And I had a little bit of experience in the background, but I went out there and I opened my eyes to realize, okay, this is way different than what I pictured. So it was really good to get out there and learn and experience the differences in identity. My experience is very positive to say the least. I got the first-hand experience of what the backbone of the industry was like. It made me be a lot more appreciative and understanding of it as well. The one thing that really stood out to me was being able to apply chapter 10 to my experience on how they solve conflicts. I had a first-hand experience when a shipment of chemicals did not come in on time. They need these chemicals on their crops, like on the dot. They don't have time to sit around a week or two when problems arise. They need to spray these crops. This prevents against any kind of diseases, any kind of molds, and any kind of things along those lines. They were really direct when they were solving their conflicts, and this was a prime example of it. They didn't sit around, beat around the bush. They didn't have time to do that. This could damage their whole crop, their whole harvest. So they were very direct, and that was very common with anything they did in the farm as well. I learned a lot about intercultural communication with my experience on the farm. Chapter 6 was very applicable to the situation I was in. There was two main concepts that I found that were very common on the farm, and the first one was collectivism, which is on page 92, and the second was high uncertainty avoidance, which is on page 94. The collectivism aspect is they're a very tight-knit community. The Sabbath farms in general, they're very family oriented. They want the whole family to succeed, the operation to succeed. There is no individualism at all on the farm. And that was very common since day one when I was out there. The second, when it came to high uncertainty avoidance, is they didn't want any problems to arise. Obviously that's a perfect world. Problems are going to come, but they didn't like any uncertainty on the farm. They did a lot of pre-planning, any kind of solutions that you could pre-plan that would help solve these problems that would arise. That was very common in the farming industry in general. A lot of the farms around the area, if they didn't have parts, they could call, Sabbath Farms, say, hey, do you have this? And the collectivism and high uncertainty was very common when I was out there. The biggest topic that I learned about intercultural communication, come from a different culture that I experienced was, in chapter 6 on page 90, when it talked about, how culture is adaptive. And this was very easy to apply, and I learned a lot about it when I was on my experience on the farm. The industry is continually changing, and they need to adapt to these changes. These changes come from the tariffs that Trump is imposing, as well as just the overall increases in seed, chemical and fertilizer on the farm. They have to adapt to these changes, stay operationally efficient and effective, and to just stay up afloat and running. Talking to Jaden, he's very open to adapting to new, practices and more modern practices. And his uncle, who has been passed down his, generation to generation, the practices his ancestors have used. I just think overall, Jaden said he was, trying to adopt these new practices into the farm. That's what the younger generation is more keen on doing now. And I think the farming industry will have to change that overall in general. Overall, my experience is very positive. Even if it doesn't, affect me generally on my degree or, anything I want to do with my life, it was very eye-opening to say the least on, the backbone of the industry that affects the overall population.